Hello and welcome to the Max Revenue Show. I'm your host, Trey Shields, along with the Zen Master of Commercial Insurance. Zen as in Zen, not Zyn.
That'd be Zin. I think that'd be Zin or Zine.
But
Zane.
but before we even get started, I just want to give a shout out to my boy Micah. Congratulations, everybody. Let's put our hands together. Micah didn't. His wife did all the work. Micah welcomed his second child into the world yesterday. So kudos to you, man. That's awesome. Super stoked for you. That's a really big deal. Nothing like being in charge of another human being for the rest of their life, or at least until they turn 20. So congrats, man. That's all joking aside. That's awesome. We need more good people having lots of kids. So stoked for you, brother.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Hey man, appreciate that. I'm pumped. Yeah, it's been less than 24 hours since the little boy arrived. So yeah, and mom did all the hard work. I was just there encouraging and but yeah, uh, definitely nothing I envy or ever would want to do in my life. So I don't know why anyone would that didn't have to. Um, but yeah, I'm 40% of the way to catching you, so I got some more work to do.
We're doing our best to fight the depopulation crisis looming on the horizon.
Yes, get to work. You got another one or
Um,
two in you, right?
no, no chance. Not happening. Not happening.
Dude, you look fresh
So
today.
I'm.
You look
I
fresh. You look,
shaved. This is the first time you've ever. I don't know if you've ever seen me shave what I call a beard. It's hardly a beard. It's more like a
yeah,
puberty neck beard. But
look
yeah,
like
this is it.
5 years younger, man. Maybe 10. If the light's hitting you right. There we go.
Dang, I'll take it. Um, all right, so let's stop the bullshit. Let's get into this. I know you're short on time. Want to be respectful of you and the baby and all that good stuff. So this week we're going to talk about voicemails. Um, we get asked this question a lot. What should I say? Should I leave a voicemail? That's kind of like the first thing. Should I leave a voicemail? Yay or nay? And the second part is, well, what should I leave if I do leave a voicemail? So I have my own kind of philosophy around voicemails. Um, but I'm going to let you skin the cat first. So go ahead, you do your thing, and then I'll jump in and give my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, and you mentioned this in the newsletter, and I've said this as well too, but that went out this week. The newsletter went out this week. Is focus on the majors, not the minors. So it's like I would worry more about a script first and like a first meeting and that kind of stuff, and just getting your prospecting activity done, getting it organized. Like focus on like the pillars and the foundation stuff before you spend a ton of time going down. What should I say in a voicemail? Should I make 6 calls, 7 calls? Should I sign off yours truly, sincerely, respectfully on an email? It's like that's the kind of stuff that ultimately is not going to move the needle for you a ton. So, we're doing this show, but it's like I think part of the point of the show is to we'll address voicemails in our strategy, but it's also like, hey, focus on the major stuff. Don't get caught in the weeds because it is easy to get down the rabbit holes of all these like different things in sales and when we can get so pulled away from really the core, right? And like keeping first things first. So, and I think a lot of times when you get down those trails, I have nothing against trying to like get better and improve, but sometimes you can almost when you go down that path, like you get so far away from just the basics and the core principle stuff that all of a sudden like you're spending way less time prospecting and way more time, reading LinkedIn posts, listening to podcasts on sales, just get out there and do it. So but yeah, my philosophy on voicemails has kind of been it's fluid. I don't like using that word nowadays, but yeah, it's fluid. It's changed a lot, and um, it used to be leave a voicemail, right? Because why would you call and not leave a voicemail? Because you're kind of wasting your time. And then for those who haven't heard before, I kind of got down the phone ready leads, which is basically finding phone picker uppers. I'm still a big believer in using that technology to do that. But their strategy was don't ever leave a voicemail until like the last call. So like your fifth call or whatever, then leave a voicemail because your callback rate will be higher if you don't. I agree with them, but there's some nuance, and the nuance comes in this. And if you're calling cell phones, I don't think you need to leave a voicemail for the first 2, 3 calls because there is that mysteriousness, like mystique, and I just seen it for myself that I get callbacks. Because people, there's just it's inherent in people. Like, who called me? And if they call you 2, 3, you're eventually gonna maybe answer it or call them back. And so that was the reason they didn't leave the voicemail because they also said, hey, if you leave one, you might kill your chances of them picking up the phone, right? And this is if
Mm.
you're calling cell phones. If you're calling desk phones, that's where I said there's nuance. That goes out the window to me. If you're calling desk phones, direct lines, anything that's not a cell phone, I'm a believer in leaving a voicemail. Maybe not the very first time. That's again, it's not going to move the needle. Leave it if you want the first time. Don't leave it. I don't care. Um, but the way I've so that's kind of like my thoughts on like frequency or just leaving voicemails in general. You know, um, now like what I say is I agree with your point 100%. I used to leave this one, and it was like, "Hey, John, it's Micah. Just calling to see if you could help me out. I had a quick question." Now, I'm not lying because I'm looking for help, right? And I don't know if that person's in charge of the insurance, whatever. So there's literally it's I always felt totally ethical saying it because I wasn't lying, right? And it's that mysterious deal where it's like, okay. And when they called back, like you say this in the newsletter, there would be some people that were like, oh, immediately when I said what I did, I was like, oh well, we're totally happy, thanks, bye. I was like, okay, well, so I'm kind of like you now, where I'm just very direct and like this is what I kind of been saying pretty much, like, hey Trey, it's Micah from Christensen Group. We have never spoke before. Hey, I wanted to call you about your company's business insurance. Before you delete this, I know you got an agent you work with. I have zero interest in quoting, but I didn't know. A lot of owners I talk to feel like they just wonder, are we overpaying? Or, is my agent truly doing the best job? Are they missing something? And when they try to answer this question, it just becomes a nightmare. I've been able to help contractors answer this question using a totally different approach around due diligence. I just didn't know if that was something you think would make sense. If you think so, give me a call, and then I leave my number. And that's pretty much it. I know it's a little bit of a longer voicemail, but my thing is the reason I like that one is again, like it's direct, but it's also if I've left a couple of those, at least if I catch them, they kind of like have some familiarity. Like, oh yeah, I kind of know why you're calling, and it kind of I don't want to say it warms up the call, um, but but yeah. So I get a way more. My favorite voicemail. I think I did a YouTube video on this was no voicemail at all, and that's if you're calling cell phones because that is the best callback ratio I get is when I don't leave a voicemail. I know some people have an aneurysm over here in that you should always leave voicemails every single call, blah, blah, blah. I think we're both on the same page here. It's like the whole topic is kind of like it's not going to move the needle. So don't stress out. Do what works for you, but always be honest. Make sure it fits within your principles of a person so you can feel good about whatever strategy you pick.
Totally agree. Do you have any good voicemail? So I agree with everything you said. If you read the newsletter, you know that. Don't major in minor things. I'm not a big fan of leaving voicemails on the first one or two calls because I want to keep the leverage on my side. I feel like if I leave a voicemail, now the ball is in their court to call me back if they're interested, and I don't like that. I want to be able to hit them a couple of times. Um, and then I just shoot them straight on the voicemail. So that's pretty much it. Do you have any voicemail? Do you have any good voicemail stories?
Yes. This is from way back in 2008 or 9, my first sales job out of college. I was doing finance, selling like leasing services, essentially a third party finance company. And this guy, I talked to him on a cold call, and he says, "Yep, call me back next month. I'm definitely interested." We talked for a couple minutes, right? Asked some questions. I was like, "Okay." And I'm 22. You think like, yeah, this one's this guy is like, this is at the point when you take everyone who says "call me back later" like they're telling you the gospel, like the truth, right? And so all of a sudden I call him back and he doesn't pick up. Then I call him like two, three, four, five, And so eventually I was like, dude, I was getting pissed, and I'm like, what the heck, man? And so I called him and I basically called him a liar. I said, hey Bob, and it was a very passive aggressive. Like I've noticed passive aggressive type of voicemails or notes will definitely rile prospects up, and you'll get a response, but it won't really serve its purpose, right? And so I said, hey, I was like, I'm trying to go off this is, 15 years ago, but I think I was like, for sure, I was like, hey, Bob, I've just got to say, man, I'm really disappointed. I thought you were being honest when you told me to call you back, and clearly you weren't, or maybe something changed and I'm totally wrong. If that's the case, let me know. But I took you for a man of your word. I thought, you'd
Ooh,
pick up the phone.
shit.
But dude, it's the funny thing is when I look back on it, it's like, was it a so that was the voicemail. Dude, I got a call back in like 1 minute. Like it was crazy. Like less than 5 minutes, phone rings. Boom, it's Bob. And he wasn't like that pissed. I think he was just like very offended and like, dude, no, I am a man of my word. I'm an honest person. And we ended up chat. He called me and we talked, but it wasn't like I didn't get the business, but it was. He's like, hey, I just want you to know, I am an honest person, man. Like I just got busy and blah blah blah. So I look back on that, and I'm like, I was speak. It's kind of like when a child says something, they just call it like it is. I was essentially just doing that, and no one ever does that in business, right? And I think when you just call it out what it is, you just lied to me. Use that word, and it's like, oh, dang, like. But I'm like, I'm not telling you to go out there and leave voicemails telling your prospects they're lying to, but essentially they are, right? So,
Please,
anyways, that's
God,
probably
don't let me just cut this off here. Do not do what Micah just did. Jesus Christ, that's awful.
it
I mean,
worked.
if you want to piss me, do that. If you want call me and call me a liar on the voicemail. That's not going to go over well. I can't believe you
Yeah,
did that. I mean, I've done similar. I'm not going to lie. Because when you're young and you live and die by every deal and you don't really know how things work, you kind of like you try to squeeze the orange as much as you can. But I don't recommend it.
yeah. No, I wouldn't recommend that one. So, well, how about you? Any any funny
Yeah,
stories?
yeah. I was just thinking about it. It's not really like a voicemail thing, but I called a guy and it was actually last year. It was right when I first started. I don't know if you remember this. You go back and listen to some of the old episodes. I'd picked up a BOR, but I lost it because it was within the rescinding period. Like the carrier, it didn't
Yep.
the 10-day rescinding period because I picked up the BOR like 7 days out. And so, anyways, um, I ended up just randomly hearing from the guy. He called me and left me a voicemail. This is like 6 months ago. And he's like, "Hey man, I've just really been thinking about you." He's like, um, I don't know how the insurance is going for you, but like, I have a biz opportunity that you might be interested in. Da 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 da. Like, give me a call back. It was fucking Amway.
Oh my gosh.
he was
What
uh
that
he
guy's
was
ruthless,
calling
man.
me, dude. Hey, to respect the hustle.
Network
My man
marketers,
was.
baby. Maybe they make great producers, network marketers, because they're shameless. And nothing against my wife has done some network marketing stuff.
Oh,
It
I have too. Back
yeah,
in my
it
twenties.
always, dude, it sounds so good. It's like, gosh, I could be sitting on the beach. I just talk to people. I sell like it's just like mailbox money. I'm just sitting here. The machine's running. Man, it sounds so glorious.
Yep.
But I
All
prefer
right. Well,
courses.
yeah, amen. Yeah, amen. We'll just do passive digital products. Um, Let me pull up this. Okay, so let's hit some questions real quick before you go. So I put up a post the other day. It said one of the hardest parts of being a producer no one talks about: staying organized, back and forth with insureds, back and forth with underwriters, gathering prospect info, have finished apps. Loose ends everywhere. Sales and prospecting is paramount, but you must be organized to make it count. Boom. How about that little rhyme there?
Dude, I'm gonna call you
Um,
Busta.
yeah, and then so we'll call him Will. Ask the question: what do you expect from your account manager in staying organized? So that's
Great
not
question.
something that I can tackle in a response on LinkedIn. So let's just jam for a second on what are expectations for account managers or CSRs when it comes to staying organized. How do you do it? You got a pretty solid team over there.
Dude, yeah, it's I've seen so many different methods on this, and you got the old school producers who like literally think like their account managers are their executive assistants, which I don't prescribe to that mindset. My I've always been more involved, more hands on, and I think that was just the way I was taught in the industry, and I didn't have like an account manager per se. I had more of a customer service central number to call in when I first got in at Federated. So that's kind of the model I ran with. But I was very involved with gathering the renewal updates, talking to the underwriter, hey, where's the pricing, meeting with my client 4 times throughout the year proactively. So that was kind of built into the way I operated. I think there's some really good things to that I still use to this day. And I feel like producers that get away from that, what happens is their clients start just looking at the account manager as the agent. And if you do that, all you're doing is setting yourself up to be basically useless, right? In the client's perspective, like another agent comes in there, sings some song and dance about how they do this and that. All of a sudden the client starts to be like, man, that sounds a little bit, I kind of want some attention, And I think that's what I'm hearing when I'm seeing, if you're at a big shop and listening, take this to heart, right? Is what I'm seeing, and I know this because I'm in the trenches. I'm having meetings with companies who are with the big boys, but they're still $25,000, $30,000 revenue accounts, right? But they're feeling like, man, we just need someone. Our agents, okay, they're fine. Our account manager does what they got to do, but I just want someone who's a little bit more involved. I want to feel kind of special, right? It's so old school, dude, but that's literally all these people want, and you know and I think that's where the bigger shops fail because what they're doing, and you and I were at one, they're trying to pull you out of the process and literally only have you like come in at the renewal and then maybe a pre-renewal strategy type call, right? But it's very kind of like pass to the AE, pass to the AM, and there's definitely some importance to that because you can get so sucked up on the other side. So it's kind of like this spectrum, right? It's like you kind of need both, but it's finding the good kind of sweet spot. Um, and Anyway, so I guess to answer that, I don't think an account manager should be like setting my schedule for me or anything like that. What I do with mine is once a month, first Tuesday of the month, we have a call, go over all our clients, where they're at, what's coming up for renewal, what's being worked on, any issues she's seeing, because clients will email them. And I think that's a really good habit that I didn't do at our prior agency, but I've done this now with my account manager because I have one account manager, I don't have like 15. So that really helps. But then I take charge and ownership of the renewal and the renewal strategy meeting. And then if I want to do like a mid-year lunch or something like that, I'm setting that up as well. But then all their admin tasks beyond anything around the renewal, so like ID cards, COI issues, all billing, whatever. I let the account manager take charge, and I just say, hey, you can CC me if you want, and kind of you can keep me in the loop if it starts to blow up, let me know. And then if there's a coverage issue, obviously they'll contact me or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of that's a long way of answering your question, but hopefully that kind of helps some people out there.
Got it. All right, here's an interesting conundrum I want to approach you with real quick, and let me redact a few things on here just to protect the innocent. This inside Max Revenue HQ. And it says, back in December, I called up a construction company. Owner's a great guy. I like the guy genuinely. These are my favorite people to win over because they are usually ruthlessly loyal. If you put in the work and prove you know your stuff. He sent me policies to review. I found an incorrect retro date and an auto exposure. I pointed them out to show my value, and he fixed them, but he refused to BOR because he didn't want to give me that leverage on him. I explained the insurance game is perfectly laid out in the producer playbook. He still wouldn't BOR, but he told me he would let me quote all other markets and put a leash on his current broker. I market the policies and get a subpar option back compared to his existing package. Learning curve for me, which is fine. Anyways, it's basically, I'll spare you. Here's what it looks like happened. He gets in the door. He goes in. He sees some issues on the policy. He tries to get a BOR. The guy says no, but I'll let you quote the available markets. The guy agrees, and then he comes back with basically 40% higher than the expiring. You know what I'm saying? And he's like, where did I go wrong? What could I do better next time? And how can I cap this off? Does that make sense?
Here's my first thought is, did he have a conversation with the owner that says, hey man, we can shop, but you're priced really, really well. So how about you agree? How about I'll go to the market for you so you know the market is getting talked to and negotiated with. But then if I come back and put in the work to quote this, just to prove, do a marketing effort, and we're 40% higher, are you still open to going with me based on the fact that I'm way more proactive, knowledgeable, I've thrown out these issues with your current deal because I can keep you where you're at and you can have better service and a more knowledgeable broker. So, who doesn't have you exposed. So that's kind of my first thought is like, did you have that talk with the owner up front? Because if you can get that agreement, that kind of helps if you're going to go the quoting route. But,
Yep.
I only like to do that quoting exercise like this guy did. If I knew I would take that. I had to see the prices, right? So I would call my markets to begin with, be like, is this worth quoting even? And that's why I walk away from so many deals like that, because I have had those owners where like they're not willing to budge, and then it's just like, dude, you're priced the best. So I can quote, but it's kind of I literally tell them like I can quote for you, but it's literally a waste of your time and mine. You're priced really, really well. I
Yeah, a
called
lot
my
of times if
underwriters.
the market's open, it's open for a reason because it's not competitive.
Yeah, and so I think
Not all the time, but
so once but it's funny. I won a deal like this, dude. Like 2 months ago, the lady called me really late, and I was like 40 days out from renewal, and I was like, hey, I can try quoting, and she just didn't quite feel comfortable in that BOR, but I kind of trust her. She seemed cool, and I was like, okay. And then I called her about 2 weeks. I said, you're priced really well, but let me see what we can do. I want to work with you. You have a lot of service issues, but let me see. And I called her 2 weeks in and said, hey, we can't get anything close. Can we set up a meeting to talk about actually taking this over? There's a way you can work with me and stay with your carrier. And so I got the AORs due 9 days before the freaking renewal after the broker had already negotiated the whole renewal with the carrier. And we got the AOR on it. But so that's kind of a similar to this point. But you got to be willing to have that talk straight up with your guys, and you got to know the pricing. So I don't know if this guy, when you looked at the policies, talked the game, did you actually review his rates? Did you review his, you know, have you talked about marketing? You got to talk cost, even when you're doing the analysis. Don't just talk coverage.
yeah. I'm just looking at some of the comments. So and again, you can only diagnose so much because this is from a post, so you don't understand all the nuance. But it looks like he started off by editing the guy's, or reviewing his policies, and it's like that's kind of like a couple of steps down the road. The first thing is we talk about this all the time: how you open the door matters. So you're calling in, you're asking about due diligence. You get a meeting. Like from the very beginning, you're coming in and saying, like, listen, I have a process. It's different than what you're used to in the past. If this is something you're interested in, great. And if not, that's totally fine too. But, just getting copies of policies and then showing them that he had an exclusion or two, that's not due diligence. Due diligence is not a policy review. It is a much larger, more holistic view of their whole insurance program, their risk management, claims, all of the above. It's what happens is, and I did it and am still guilty of it. You get in the door, you get a little sliver of the pie, and then you think that you can go and then just use that as a wedge, and it's like, no, you're kind of like jumping. You're hopping in at step 2 and then trying to hop out at step 5. You got to very systematically follow the process. And then so he
Yep.
goes in and based off of 2 exclusions, he asks for a BOR, and it's like that's not the process at all. You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
hey, I found something. Can it sign a BOR? That's not it.
and what we
And then
think is a big
lastly,
deal,
go ahead.
maybe what we think is a big deal is maybe not, right? The retro rate, I know it's a big deal because you can lose coverage, and for a pollution policy or professional, whatever. But anyways, yeah. So sorry to cut you off there, but
No, it's fine. You're totally right. Perception is reality. He might not view that as pain. You know what I mean?
yep.
So, and then to back up at the end, it's like this. The due diligence or the MICA solace method or max revenue method, whatever you want to call it. This whole thing is not bulletproof. Like even when you do it right and you go through all the steps and you get down to presentation, you're still only going to get what 1 in 3, 1 in 4 are going to be willing to sign the BOR. But the thing
Yeah.
is like you got to go through that process first, and then if this guy had done proper due diligence and gone behind the scenes and checked with all of his underwriters and done all this stuff, he would have known it wasn't worth quoting to begin with. So then he wouldn't have kind of shot himself in the foot.
Yep. I totally agree. And it's not to blast the dude because I just took 2
Oh
months
no, I
ago.
really
found
like
it.
this guy. He's actually very active inside HQ. So I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not blasting him either.
No, I don't.
He's look.
I didn't take it that way, but anyone listening, it's like anytime we bring up situations like this, we're not talking down to people, because I still just a month ago myself quoted this Ready Mix deal that I was like, I knew it was the revenue was about 50K, so I was like, okay. And it was a stupid thing because I called the markets ahead of time, and they're like, we can maybe compete. You know how some underwriters are kind of wishy washy, and it's like they kind of give you some hope. This kind of annoys me, but side issue. But it's like you send them the pricing, and they're like, oh yeah, we can compete. It's like I don't want no. Can you win? And can you win by, because that's what it's going to take. Can you win by 15% over current? They're like, well, yeah, send in the submission. It's like, dude, just tell me, I'm trying to save everyone time here. Anyway, so I fell into the trap, right? And wasted a bunch of time, probably, 4 or 5 hours quoting and gathering information. But anyways,
All right. Well, you got time for one more question?
yeah, one more before I get in trouble.
Where is this at? Quoting versus VOR. And my agency has us push for VORs as much as possible, but I've read that some agencies don't like VORs and always want to quote. I've had several opportunities where I've tried going the quoting route, and they always end up with the incumbent broker flooding the marketplace and leaving us with practically no options. I wanted to see if anyone had advice for how to quote more effectively, because while I always push for a BOR, I know a lot of buyers won't make a switch unless you can prove to them you will save money, which this kind of dovetails on the last thing. So let's rehash when it makes sense to quote.
Well, from a buyer's perspective, it only makes sense to quote if an agent has a market your guy currently doesn't have. That's as simple as that. I mean, from a seller's perspective, which is everyone listening to this, I'm sure. I don't think we have business owners listening to this podcast unless you're an agency owner, but there's some. It's kind of like a mixture of art and science, because I think you got to get a feel for people. Like I've said, I had no choice. I had to AOR everything. And then since coming to my new agency, we can do whatever we want. I mean, I can quote every deal if I want to quote. I can send 100 quotes in a year, And so it's opened my eyes to kind of the art of reading people and understanding and getting you got to understand that there's just a lot of business owners who have a hard time wrapping their head around switching without seeing a price. It's just, even though it doesn't make any sense, it's just like a psychological thing, right? They don't look at us like a real estate agent or whatever, or a sports agent, and they should, but they don't. And you just gotta learn how to kind of read people, do all the due diligence first, and then if they're still not willing to budge, you got to ask yourself, is this someone I want to work with? Is it worth my time? And do I trust this person? Do I feel like they kind of get it, but this is just that little mental roadblock they can't get over? And that's kind of my personal. I mean, there's a whole lot of technical things I could speak to, like, get the premiums, get all, look at the losses, do a market analysis, everything we do in our due diligence, basically get all that information first, and then make your decision if it makes sense to quote or not. But I think that's, people kind of know that, but I think there is that like skill of just reading people and figuring out, is this where I should, take a shot?
Yep, because I do have kind of a nice little situation with a market. I have a different feather in my cap than some. So when I approach it, I kind of look at like the initial, like a decision tree, right? So it's like, am I calling about my special market, or am I just calling general biz in my niche? Okay, well, if I'm calling on a transportation, I've got a little feather in my cap. If I'm calling construction, then I don't. Okay, so that's going to affect how I open the door. And then, so let's say I'm, going this BOR route through construction. Well, then I'm going to do due diligence, and then due diligence is going to let me know whether it makes sense to quote or not. And so I think a lot of times, like, we get in the door, we kind of like, we don't really have a plan. We're just like, hey, I'm an agent. I'd love to write your insurance. Can I review your policies? Then you get the policies back. They won't sign a BOR, and then so you just kind of quote, and then you're just kind of out in this purgatory in no man's land. And you need like a systematic approach. There's got to be, I hate to say it, but like we kind of go over it in the producer playbook, but there's got to be a plan. And then you have little alternatives on your decision tree for if X doesn't work, then Y, and so forth. But yeah, I don't know. There's got to be a process.
100% agree.
And that's something you and I need to talk about off air. I have a few ideas for how to tighten a few things up with our due diligence process. So we'll talk about that later. But anything else you want to touch on before we go?
No, all I would say to people is go out there, create your own luck by making a bunch of calls and doing, I'll end on one little story that's kind of funny. On Friday, this has happened twice now in the last 2 weeks, back to back. But on Friday or Thursday night, my little 3-year-old was playing with a bunch of papers and stuff, and I have like old little sticky notes, that I keep like passwords on and all that stuff. You're not supposed to, but anyways, she's playing in my office, gets him out. She's playing with my mom or grandma, and then one of the things that she had in her little hands that she was playing with was a business card. Falls on the ground. My mom's like, "Hey, do you need this stuff?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah." Grab it, and there's the business card. This company that I met with 3 or 4 years ago did all the due diligence. They couldn't hire me, right? It was like some 20-some-year relationship. Well, I had this little voice. It was like, dude, give him a call. And so it was my last call on Friday. Call him. She
What
answers,
time?
and probably 11 o'clock in the morning. And she answers. I kind of had to try to refresh her who I was, and she's like, "Oh yeah, yeah." And it's been almost 4 years, I think, since I met her. And she was like, "It's your lucky day." Now, the reason I'm telling the story is because that's happened 2 times in the last week. People have said, "It's your lucky day." And I made a post on it like 2 weeks ago. But what others see as luck and serendipity is just, you know, the product of your discipline and hard work, right? And it's like, but they'll call it lucky. But anyways, it was funny. And her carrier was dropping her because they're getting out of a certain type of work that she does. And anyways, so she's going to give me all the information. Basically, they have to leave their current place. So looks like a really good opportunity. But anyways, I just thought I'd share that story because it's kind of funny. That's happened twice in the last 2 weeks. It's happened a lot more times over my career where people are like, "Oh my gosh, you're still called at the perfect time. You got lucky." It's like, dude, just follow process. So speaking of process, right? You just talked process and having something in place. You will get way more lucky when you follow process.
Yeah. So I did a newsletter on this called like the 4 types of producer luck. And it's like the more activity you do, you're like building this body of work, and it's like you're expanding your surface area of which luck can happen. You know what I mean? If you're just, they always talk about like activity breeds opportunity or whatever. Like you're building this body of work, and the more drop-ins, the more emails, the more cold calls you can make, the larger and larger surface area you're creating for good things to happen. And you're just not going to get that by sitting around with your stick up your butt.
Reading about voicemail strategies.
Yeah, if you're just
To bring
sitting
it full
around reading
circle.
some stupid ass newsletter of voicemail, there, the world's greatest voicemail strategy of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right, cool. Yeah, well, let's end it there. Our only call to action is I need your email address. So I'll trade you your email address for the best damn newsletter in the industry for producers. Maybe the only newsletter in the industry for producers, but it's the best regardless. To your inbox every Sunday. Email address for a newsletter that'll make you better. And at minimum, just entertain you with the shenanigans that we go through. All right, with that, again, Micah, congrats. Big deal. Congrats
Thank
on the
you.
kiddo. And we
you.
will see everybody next week. Y'all have a great week.
Adios.
All right, bye.